The Happiness Advantage. Shawn Achor. Most of us live by a simple formula. Work hard, become successful, and then you'll be happy. Get the promotion, hit the sales target, land the degree. Happiness is the reward waiting on the other side of success. Shawn Achor spent years researching positive psychology at Harvard, and he says that formula is not just slightly off, it's completely backwards. Success doesn't create happiness. Happiness creates success. In his book, The Happiness Advantage, Achor lays out the science behind why a positive brain literally outperforms a negative or even a neutral one, and gives 7 practical principles you can use to rewire your brain for better performance at work and in life. Let's break the whole thing down. Section 1. The core idea. We've had the formula backwards. Achor calls the conventional belief the success first model. Work hard leads to become successful, leads to then you'll be happy. The problem, he argues, is that even when you hit a goal, the brain doesn't stay satisfied. You get the promotion, and almost immediately, your brain moves the goalposts. Now you need the next promotion, the bigger house, the higher number. Achor calls this the happiness stuck on the horizon problem. No matter how much you achieve, happiness keeps receding, just out of reach, because your definition of success keeps expanding. His research, including work he did studying Harvard students and later corporate employees at major companies, pointed to the opposite causal direction. Happiness fuels success, not the other way around. When your brain is in a positive state, it doesn't just feel better, it functions measurably better. Achor cites research showing that a positive mindset produces higher energy and creativity, better problem-solving ability, faster and more accurate decision-making, stronger resilience under stress, even physical benefits, better health outcomes, and immune function. The name of the book comes from this idea. Happiness isn't just pleasant, it's a competitive advantage. Section 2. The science behind it. Achor grounds this in the field of positive psychology and leans heavily on the work of researchers like Barbara Fredrickson, whose broaden and build theory shows that positive emotions literally widen the range of thoughts and actions your brain considers, while negative emotions narrow your focus down to survival mode thinking. He points to a number of striking studies to back this up. Doctors put in a positive mood before making a diagnosis, for example, were found to work through the same information faster and more accurately than doctors in a neutral state. Salespeople who scored higher on optimism measures were dramatically more likely to outperform their more pessimistic peers. Achor's argument isn't just think happy thoughts and everything works out. It's more precise than that. Your brain's mindset acts as the lens through which it processes reality, and a positive lens produces measurably better outputs, sharper thinking, more stamina, more creative problem solving than a negative or neutral one. That sets up the rest of the book, which shifts from why happiness matters to how do you actually build more of it. Section 3. The 7 principles. The bulk of the book is organized around 7 core principles, each one a practical lever for training your brain toward a more positive, high-performing state. Let's go through all 7. Section 4. Principle 1. The Happiness Advantage. This is the foundational idea we already covered. Happiness precedes and produces success, not the reverse. Achor frames this as a mindset reset. Instead of chasing the next achievement in hopes it will finally make you happy, the goal is to build positivity now, because that's what will actually fuel the achievement. The practical takeaway here is almost philosophical. Stop deferring your happiness to some future finish line. The finish line keeps moving. Cultivating positivity in the present is what improves your odds of reaching whatever's next. Section 5. Principle 2. The fulcrum and the lever. This is one of the book's most memorable metaphors. Imagine your brain is a lever, and your mindset is the fulcrum it pivots on. The position of that fulcrum determines how much power your lever has to move the world around you. If your fulcrum, your mindset, is set to a negative or defeated position, even a huge amount of effort, a long lever, won't move much. But if you shift the fulcrum toward a positive, empowered mindset, the same amount of effort suddenly moves far more. In practice, this means the same set of circumstances, a stressful job, a difficult boss, a heavy workload, can either crush you or barely register as a challenge, depending entirely on where your mental fulcrum is positioned. Achor's point: you often have more control over the fulcrum than you think, even when you can't change the weight of the lever itself, your actual circumstances. He offers a practical tool here too: mentally reframing stress. Instead of viewing a stressful event as a threat, Achor encourages viewing it as a challenge. Research shows this single reframe changes both your physiological stress response and your actual performance under pressure. Section 6. Principle 3. The Tetris Effect. If you've ever played Tetris for hours and then found yourself seeing Tetris shapes everywhere you look afterward, in windows, in grocery store shelves, you've experienced what Achor calls the Tetris Effect. Your brain gets trained to automatically scan for a specific pattern, whether you want it to or not. Achor argues the same thing happens with negativity. If your brain spends most of its time scanning for problems, threats, and things that are wrong, it gets very good at finding them, even when they're not the most important thing in the room. This is why some people seem to walk into any situation and immediately spot everything that could go wrong. The fix is to deliberately retrain the pattern. Consciously practice scanning for the positive, for opportunities, for things that are going well, for reasons to be grateful. Over time, this isn't just a nicer way to see the world. It's a literal retraining of your brain's default scanning pattern. Practical tool: Achor's well-known 3 gratitudes exercise. Writing down 3 new things you're grateful for each day for 21 days straight to help retrain the brain's automatic scan toward the positive. Section 7. Principle 4. Falling up. This principle deals with how people respond to failure and setbacks. Achor's research found that after a setback, people generally fall into one of 3 explanatory paths: spiraling down, treating the failure as proof of a permanent, pervasive problem. I always mess this up, and it affects everything. Staying flat, bouncing back to baseline, but no better off than before. Falling up, using the setback as fuel, finding the path that leads to growth because of the difficulty, not in spite of it. The people who fall up tend to reframe adversity in 3 specific ways. They see it as temporary rather than permanent, specific rather than pervasive across their whole life, and something they have some control over rather than a fixed trait. This isn't about pretending failure feels good. It's about how you explain the failure to yourself afterward, because that explanation shapes whether you rebound stronger or weaker. Section 8. Principle 5. The Zorro Circle. Named after the fictional swordsman, this principle is about regaining a sense of control after you've been overwhelmed. In the Zorro origin story, before he becomes a master swordsman capable of taking on any challenge, his mentor forces him to train in a small, confined circle, mastering a tiny space before ever expanding outward. Achor applies this to stress and overwhelm. When everything feels chaotic and out of control, trying to fix everything at once usually backfires and reinforces the feeling of helplessness. Instead, the move is to shrink your focus down to one small, manageable circle, a single achievable goal. Master that, and then gradually expand the circle outward as your sense of control returns. This is essentially a psychological explanation for why small wins matter so much. Each small win inside your circle rebuilds your belief that you have agency, which is the exact thing overwhelm destroys. Section 9. Principle 6. The 20-second rule. This might be the single most practical, tactical principle in the entire book. Achor's research, echoing the psychology of willpower, shows that willpower is a limited, exhaustible resource. You can't just rely on motivation and discipline to build new habits, because your reserves of both run out fast, especially under stress. Instead of relying on willpower, Achor recommends manipulating the activation energy required to start a behavior. To build a good habit, lower the activation energy. Make the good behavior easier and faster to start. His famous personal example. To finally start playing guitar regularly, he didn't rely on motivation. He just moved the guitar out of the closet and placed it in the middle of his living room, removing every small barrier between him and picking it up. To break a bad habit, raise the activation energy. Add friction that delays the impulsive behavior by roughly 20 seconds. Achor's example. He wanted to stop watching so much TV, so he took the batteries out of the remote and moved them across the room. Just enough extra friction to interrupt the automatic habit loop. The core insight: you don't need more willpower. You need to redesign your environment so the right choice is the easy choice, and the wrong choice requires a little more effort. Section 10. Principle 7. Social investment. The final principle is about the role of relationships during hard times. Achor found that, especially under high stress, people often instinctively pull away from their support networks, cutting themselves off from friends, family, and colleagues right when they need that support the most. His research suggests this is exactly backwards. The people who weather stress and adversity best are the ones who actively invest more in their social connections during difficult periods, not less. Social support functions almost like a buffer against the negative effects of stress, both emotionally and, according to some of the research he cites, even physiologically. The practical takeaway: when things get hard, resist the urge to isolate. Lean toward your relationships, not away from them, both for your own resilience and because strong teams and relationships tend to outperform disconnected individuals, even under pressure. Section 11. Applying this at work. The ripple effect. A large part of Achor's research and consulting career has focused specifically on workplaces, and one of the book's key arguments is that positivity isn't just a personal wellness topic. It has measurable business impact. He cites research linking positive mindsets to higher sales performance, increased productivity, better teamwork and lower turnover, improved accuracy and complex problem-solving. Section 12. Fair critiques of the book. To keep this balanced, it's worth mentioning a few common critiques of the happiness advantage. Some of the science is dated or oversimplified. The book was published in 2010, and a handful of the specific studies Achor cites have since faced replication challenges or been contested, a common issue across pop psychology books from this era. The broad thrust of positive psychology research is still well supported, but not every individual statistic in the book has held up perfectly under later scrutiny. It leans corporate. Because much of Achor's career has been in corporate consulting, some readers feel the book's framing occasionally treats happiness primarily as a productivity tool rather than valuing it for its own sake. Worth noticing if that framing doesn't resonate with you. It can understate structural and circumstantial hardship. Critics note that shift your mindset advice lands very differently for someone facing genuine systemic barriers, chronic illness, or trauma than it does for a relatively stable knowledge worker. The book's tools are more about optimizing an already workable situation than solving deep external hardship. None of this undermines the book's core, well-supported claim that mindset meaningfully shapes outcomes, but it's a useful lens to apply the tools with some nuance rather than treating them as a cure-all. He also introduces the idea that positivity is somewhat contagious within teams and organizations. Leaders and individuals who cultivate genuine positivity tend to raise the baseline mood and performance of everyone around them, creating a ripple effect that extends well beyond any one person's own happiness. Section 13. 3 takeaways to apply this week. If you only take 3 things from the entire book, make it these. Do the 3 gratitudes exercise for a week. Every day, write down 3 new things you're grateful for. It sounds almost too simple, but it's one of the most well-supported tools in the whole book for retraining your brain's default scan toward the positive. Redesign one habit using the 20-second rule. Pick one good habit you want to build and remove one piece of friction that's currently in its way. Pick one bad habit you want to break and add 20 seconds of friction before you can do it. When you're overwhelmed, shrink your circle. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, pick one small, controllable goal, finish it, and let that momentum carry you outward. The core message of the happiness advantage is simple to say and hard to live. Don't wait for success to make you happy. Build the happiness first. The science says it's what actually gets you there. Which of the 7 principles hit hardest for you? The fulcrum and the lever, the Zorro Circle, or the 20-second rule? Let me know in the comments. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe for more deep dives into books that actually change how you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.